Shante washte hoksila lagi ashtima an he pehe washte we. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Justice Now. My name is Crystal Cav, and I am the organizing coordinator at Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. Thank you all so much at home for joining us for another episode this Friday. For those of you at home or otherwise tuning in case you have not already heard, November is officially Indigenous Heritage Month. Our Indigenous neighbors have been and continue to be one of the most marginalized groups in the country, especially when considering environmental injustices. Indigenous values and practices hold some of the greatest lessons in stewardship and creation care. It is crucial that we try our best to protect and uplift our local Indigenous communities in scenarios of environmental injustices like the Mountain Valley Pipeline. To join us in this conversation about the Mountain Valley Pipeline and the environmental injustices, we are excited to have Crystal Cavalier, um, the co-director of the Seven Directions of Service. Um, and thank you so much for joining us, Crystal. And before we begin our conversation, would you mind and would you be willing to lead us in the land acknowledgement today?
Yes, I sure will. Thank you so much. So, usually with these traditional land acknowledgements, I just want to acknowledge the historical tribes and the current tribes. So, in Richmond area and in the Mountain Valley Pipeline area and the Mountain Valley Southgate, most of the tribes lived very close to each other. So you have the Nottoway, the Mattaponi, the Pamunkey, you have the Monacan, the Chickahominy, you have the Occaneechi, you have the Tudelo, the Saponi, the Manahannock, and the Powhatan. And all of these tribes worked and lived close together to each other. And there are a whole bunch of tribes in Virginia, such as the Chickahominy, the Mattaponi, the Nottoway, and the Monacan, and the Pamunkey. I don't know if I said that already, but they are still in existence today, as well as my tribe, the Occaneechi. So thank you so much to our people who have lived on this land for hundreds, thousands of years, and they are still here today, still existing. So thank you so much for letting me honor these ancestors and relatives today.
Yes, thank you so much for clarifying that and sharing that map with us. Clearly shows, right, all land is Indigenous land, and we are all settling in Indigenous land, and we have to acknowledge that. And beyond that, on this show, we're hoping to explain how we can help our Indigenous neighbors and communities, right? And let's just start broadly, right? What does Indigenous Heritage Month mean to you, and how are Indigenous people affected by changes in our climate?
So Indigenous Month means to me, um, first of all, it saddens me that we're just dedicated just 1 month out of the year to celebrate our Indigenous ancestry and heritage. I would also like to say that we need to do better in our communities of acknowledging Indigenous people, period. Our Indigenous connections to traditional homelands is at the heart of many Native people's identities. Environmental justice is of heightened importance to most Indigenous communities. And not only do irresponsible and exploitative environmental policies harm the physical and financial health of our Indigenous communities today, they also cause a lot of spiritual harm by destroying the land held in a place of exceptional reverence for Indigenous people. Um, One of the main issues that we're fighting is our people's invisibility. Since before the formation of the United States, we dealt with erasure, we dealt with genocide, we dealt with our people due to the extermination era. So right around the 1800s and even up to the termination area in the 1950s and 60s, we have to go around to these communities. And even here on the East Coast, we were genocided out. We were also paper genocided, especially in Virginia with Walter Pleckler. He he changed many races of people from they called us Indians, so Native Americans, to colored, to mulatto, and then eventually to black. And so many of the communities, they just acculturated into dominant society. And, you see them now trying to rematriate and reculture themselves into, coming back into their lifestyle. But many people, and I'm sorry, my husband just came in and the dogs are like checking him out. But most of the people are trying to just, come back into an existence. And so having talks like these and having Indigenous Heritage Month and, and having people just acknowledge that we are still here, it's so important.
Yes, and VIPL likes to emphasize that and highlight that by doing land acknowledgements and recognizing that we are on stolen land. Especially when we get on the show every Friday, we have to make sure we are addressing that issue because when we're talking about environmental justice as an organization, it will be it would be crucial for us to recognize that the first environmental injustice in this nation has been the genocide of indigenous peoples, right? Indigenous land and
Right.
indigenous heritage. And talking about how indigenous communities are being affected by all these different social injustices. How have indigenous communities been affected by the Mountain Valley Pipeline? And why is protecting the environment of our indigenous neighbors so important and urgent, like you mentioned?
Right. So around the Mountain Valley Pipeline, in the Mountain Valley Pipeline Southgate Extension, and many of the other pipelines that are coming through Virginia, what these companies do, they see that there's many native communities, right, who are trying to, sorry, my my cat and dog really want to talk. They're telling you how bad it is too. Um, but what they're doing is they're coming to these communities, and they are aimed at destroying like sacred burial mounds, cemeteries, communities, and it's become an essential battle over ecological conditions and sacred sites on our indigenous lands. And what they'll do is they'll say, oh, they'll use like the federal government, such as FERC, to try to say, oh, well, we've communicated with these people. And what they usually do is these companies will send out mass letters and emails, and they'll say, oh, we reached out to these tribal communities and they didn't write back. So, they must not have any claim in this area. Or they will hire attorneys or work with cultural attorneys who represent tribes. And the tribes, I hate to say this, they don't have a educated, they're just not understanding fully what is happening in the communities. And they're so struck for trying to get negotiations with the federal government, or they're trying to get monies. They will make these decisions on behalf of their tribal citizens and not really understanding the implications that are happening right now. And I don't blame them for the lack of education, but I do blame the tribal leadership for not fully understanding the dangers and taking in account all of the people that are being affected, because it's more than tribes in the area. You also have African American communities, and then you also have white communities. And I feel that as indigenous people who were, caretakers of the land, and just how we lived in relation with the land, they should be living in relationship with all the other communities. And these environmental degradations that are happening over and over again, we have to stand up and be a voice to the community, and we have to stand up to these corporations and say, no, this is not coming through here. Like, I know this couple of weekends ago, my husband and I and the family, we went to the mountains, and we were just learning about the geography of the mountains. And the mountains have a lot of minerals and a lot of I can't think of other things that you call minerals, but like lots of rocks and things that are important. And it's very rich. Like here between Virginia and North Carolina, they have so many things that people want to dig up and take out of the earth. Like lithium and uranium and all of these gems and minerals. And I hate it. Like right now, we're fighting this pipeline that's coming through in our county. We're fighting two mining companies that are coming through our county, and they're destroyed. It just destroying our burial mounds. They destroy our water tables, our aquifers underground, and people just they don't understand that. And it's a lot of I feel it's a lot of human rights abuse that are associated with exploitation and exploration of these non-renewable energy sources, and it includes a violation to the right of life. It's a forced displacement because you see a lot of people having to move away or move out of the area, and it's a destruction of the environment of which we all depend on. So yeah, and these extractive industries, they've impacted the health and the well-being of our indigenous people and our other communities, and they destroy sacred sites, and it's just that affects our right to religion. So to me, they're affecting a lot of things, and there's a lot of consequences that these projects have violated. The right to an adequate standard of living, the right to food and water and sustenance. I'll give you an example. From the time of the colonial invaders, my relatives were farmers, hunters, and fur traders. But then when tobacco was considered gold, our family suffered major consequences of the white supremacist agriculture policy that was, employed by the English crown up until the United States today, with the federal government forcing many farming families down to one farming family in our community. So we had like 15 farming families, and now we're just down to one farming family, and it's just horrible.
Yeah, and I really like the your point about how communities are being targeted for extractive industries, right? And how that leaves not only ecological devastation, but it leaves the community distraught. And the fact that a lot of our communities are forced to choose between economical growth by extractive industries or no growth at all, and then that's that is really unjust, and that's the unfair part of it, for a lot of indigenous communities to be consistently targeted for extractive industries or for a lot of fossil fuel industries, and becoming energy sacrifice zones for not only our state's energy needs but also beyond, and the nation's energy needs, right? And in the fact that we have been consistently targeting communities of color, but indigenous communities from the start of our nation, and how that environmental injustices have been piling up, right? And now beyond extracted energy extraction, right? There are mineral extraction, renewable energy extraction that also still applies the same paradigm of choosing communities that are overburdened, communities that are not prepped to say no to these type of extractive industries, and the issue then becomes a small community against a large corporation, right? And we're seeing the same thing happen with the MVP pipeline. And I just want to also emphasize, right, this pipeline, the Southgate extension, comes with a large compressor station, and this Lambert compressor station not only does it impact our indigenous communities on the borders of North Carolina and Virginia, it also impacts a Black and low economic community in Chatham and near in Pennsylvania County. And so I really do like your point about this is not just an indigenous communities issue, right? This MVP, this Valley Pipeline, does cross multiple of our communities, a lot of our vulnerable communities. And I just want to for you to kind of explain, how will the indigenous communities be impacted by not only this pipeline, but a compressor station that won't be super far away from the border, and
Right.
from the communities?
So, like I was saying before, when we did the land acknowledgement, many of our tribes kind of held territories very close to each other and sometimes overlapped into their territories. We were sister tribes to each other, and for the most part, we got along, very well. But in these communities, we shared these rivers. So the Bannister River is a sacred river. the I think it's the Pig River, the Staunton River, then the Dan River, and then here's the Hall River. In these rivers, there's these things called fishing weirs, and the fishing weir is like this made out of rocks, and it just kind of gets the fish going into one way, right? So like the fish get to come in here and you can capture the fish. Very easier than like taking a pole and fishing for hours, right? So, this compressor station in the pipeline, they're going to affect it. One, it's going, whatever they discharge off in the air, it's going to be really loud. So the decibels, it can really damage your hearing. Two, the whatever the discharge is going off in the air, it's a lot of chemicals, and whatever blows up into the air, from simple science, that stuff comes down, it acid rains down and it comes onto these crops, and whatever they're blowing off into the air, I have no doubt that it does not affect our storms or storm systems coming through. I don't know if you've noticed that sometimes in the summer, we can just get these violent downpours of rain, like these microbursts. And if you have a crop and it's just like the topsoil layer, these things destroy the topsoil of your crop or destroy the crop itself by bruising the tobacco or bruising the soybeans or corn or whatever, or it can even uproot it. And then all of the sediment that gets washed away from this, whatever is coming down into the ground, it ends up in our rivers. So when you have this pipeline that's like felling trees and clearing land, it runs off into these small streams and tributaries, which ultimately end up into the rivers. It destroys the fish population. It destroys the drinking water. The animals are now drinking whatever chemicals that are on the land that have been there from, farmers, or whatever toxic chemicals that people are using. It's now in our water. It's affecting the animals, our animals that people hunt, and the fish, they're coming up with these weird cancers and toxics, and, we can't eat that. Back to the compressor station, those things are really loud. And, after certain periods of time, you start to lose the decibels of hearing. So like, I remember my kids, they have this, they were like, "Mom, can you hear this?" And it's some type of decibel test that only children can hear. But the older you get, the less you can hear that smaller decibel. And so I don't want to lose my hearing any quicker than what I have to. And so, no, I don't. I just don't think any of that is good. Chatham already has a compressor station there, and it is loud and it is massive. And they're like, "Oh, you can withstand that? Like, are you giving out earplugs to everybody? Like, I'm pretty sure you're not standing there without some type of ear protection." Even, just thinking, when I worked in Burlington Industries, I was in the HR department, and they gave me earplugs because they knew I would have to come out there onto the floor and hear these massive machines running noise. And so, they're worried about my hearing. So yeah, it's horrible. I don't even know what to say. Like, I sit here and I think about these people who are building this stuff. They don't live directly by the impacted area. They may live down the road, or they don't have to see this eyesore in their backyard. They don't have to have their land value destroyed, or pay property taxes on something that they can never enjoy again. So yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for really going down, and explaining not just the noise pollution, but also just the regular pollution, as well as how this pollution travels into everyone else's water, right? When we're protecting impacted communities, not only are we protecting the community itself, we're also protecting our air and our waters, right? Because there's no such thing as pollution that's going to stay in one community and stay there forever, right? Pollution will go travel to neighboring communities, counties, and even affect our larger water systems, right? Especially when you're thinking of sediment runoffs and a lot of, pesticides, and then a lot of the weed killing type of chemicals that a lot of farmers use, especially in rural counties like Pennsylvania, right? I've been down there. I've seen the compressor station, the Transco compressor station that already exists there, and I've seen the noise it makes, and how huge it is, right? And thinking of placing another one right by it, to not only double that noise of pollution, but also the air and the water quality would be ultimately destroyed for Pennsylvania County and beyond. And it goes into indigenous communities, it goes into Black and Brown communities and low income communities. And recognizing that, right, and speaking up against it is definitely not only our duty, but as creation care protectors, but also just as good being good neighbors, right?
Right.
Not only should we rise up because of the fact that others are being impacted, but it will eventually impact our lives as well.
Right.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And is there are any, since we're kind of wrapping up, are there any actions you would like to shout out and urge people to come out and support? And what are how have you all been fighting against this? And what are the organizing steps that you all have been taking? And if you can share a little bit more about the upcoming events that people can come and join and then help out.
Okay, so I'll go through the things. So we have an upcoming event tomorrow from 10 until whenever. It's a door knocking campaign, and we're going to be door knocking in Pennsylvania County, so right around Chatham. We're going to also be door knocking in Rockingham, North Carolina, and Alamance County, North Carolina. These are all three counties that are being affected by the MVP Southgate. We also are having phone banks on November the 17th, I believe at 6 p.m., and then another one on November the 21st. And I'll have to get that time to you. But anybody can do the phone banks from their home. We already have a script that is already made for you. You just have to have a phone, just a cell phone or a home phone, because you will be making phone calls and you will just be educating or telling people to show up for this event that we're having on November the 27th. Yes, I know it is the day or 2 days after Thanksgiving, and that's usually a shopping day. But we think this is real important to our community, and we really have to show up and support our community, whether they are in support or in denial of the pipeline. We have to stand together as a community, and that's what we're doing. Is we're building unity. We want to educate the people because we don't want this to happen again. And I feel that if we organize and mobilize our people, white, Black, Hispanic, Indian, American Indian, everybody, if we work together, we can bring back a sense of community. Because I don't know if you've noticed, it is a lot of people that are angry. They have very short fuses. They don't know how to be social with people. They don't know how to agree nicely, right? Like whenever someone disagrees with you, they get mad, and you're just like, well, we can still be friends and disagree. Like people don't know how to socially interact with each other, and I don't quite know why, but we want to bring back our sense of community. And we also want to help educate our people, because these extractive industries, I forgot to tell you, they bring um, a lot of hardship on our community, like whether it's going to be a strain on the police force, a strain on emergency response systems. There's a lot of human and sex trafficking that is happening, a lot of assaults, a lot of rape. And these are things that people do not talk about. There's also the health impacts, such as lung problems, cancers, autoimmune disease, bone deformities. And many of our community members, when we speak to them, they are afraid to speak out because of this good old boy network that still exists in our, present society today. And that's why my husband and I, we founded Seven Directions of Service, to give a voice to the people. And we want people to just continue to be in good fellowship with each other, from all races, all religions, and just work together and bring back a sense of community. Because what we see now is it's all about me, but we don't want it to be about me. We want it to be about us, be about we, because this is something that we are doing together, like ours, right? Not mine, but ours. And that is what we're doing. There's also December 3rd, 2nd, and December 3rd is the Air Board hearing about the MVP compressor station. And if you didn't already speak, I don't think you can speak again. But if you could just show up in solidarity for the people who are speaking and standing up against this MVP pipeline, Southgate extension. My husband and I, we will be there. We spoke in the February event. So we will be there voicing our opinions again, how we do not support this pipeline, and we don't want it to come through. And so you can check out, yeah, 7directionsofservice.com for more information, or follow us on Facebook, so we can all stay together in connection. So thank you so much for having me on. And, on behalf of my husband, thank you so much for both of us, for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, no, and thank you for making the time. I know you literally just hopped on right after work. And this is like another job on top of, your daily life. And then I'm just really glad that you're, speaking out and protecting our communities, our air and our water, right? And really want to emphasize that when we're speaking up for our neighbors, we're also speaking up for ourselves, because
Yep.
we share the same air and water. And that's what's, kind of beautiful about our movement for environmental justice, right? Is it's all encompassing. It's all for everyone. It's not just for one community, but we're fighting to protect something bigger than us, something that can last for generations to come. So thank you so much for being here, and for everyone who's out there. I also want to encourage you all to join a bunch of grassroots and green organizations that are standing up against the Mountain Valley Pipeline and all its violations that also include the violation it has committed to our indigenous communities and neighbors, as well as the black and brown communities in its paths in Chatham and Pennsylvania County. Please register and show out and really uplift folks who and communities who are really fighting to protect literally our air and our lives, right? And thank you so much, Crystal, again for being here.
And I just want to say a final thank you to our other organizations, like your organization, Artivism Virginia, Environmental 350, the Triangle, the NAACP from all three counties,
Yeah.
and many other power, the MVP mainline fighters. Thank you all so much for us working together to fight. Like, I couldn't do this without like your help. So that's our thank you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for everybody for watching and tuning in every Friday. Make sure you join our mailing letter and e-news by clicking on that link right on the screen, so that you can be updated on all the events that are happening in regards to the MVP Southgate and the MVP mainline. And if you were on our email list, you should have gotten all the events that Crystal just mentioned, as well as the event that I mentioned, as well as the Facebook page for 7 Directions of Service. So just make sure you stay tuned and then really uplift our Indigenous neighbors and communities. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.